The dark truth about Cheech and Chong is finally being talked about, and it is not the happy story many fans believed for years. They were once seen as the kings of counterculture comedy. They turned marijuana jokes into a huge business, creating hit albums and successful movies that shaped stoner humor for decades. Cheech Marin and Tommy Chong became famous for their unique style. Cheech played the laid-back Latino character, while Chong acted as the spaced-out hippie. Together, they became symbols of cannabis culture long before legalization was even a serious topic in public debate. To fans, their chemistry looked natural and effortless. They seemed like two real friends simply being themselves on stage and on screen. Their laughter felt genuine, and their partnership looked strong. Many people believed their friendship was the secret to their success. However, behind the smoke, jokes, and public smiles, there was a much darker reality. Over time, their relationship became filled with resentment, arguments about control, financial disputes, and deep personal hurt. What looked like a perfect friendship slowly fell apart. In the beginning, their connection was real. In 1968, in Vancouver, Canada, Cheech Marin, who had left the United States to avoid being drafted into the Vietnam War, met Tommy Chong, a musician and comedy club owner. When they started performing together, something clicked immediately. They understood each other's timing and style without needing to explain it. Their early comedy albums were a big success. Their first album was even nominated for a Grammy Award. Later, their movie Up in Smoke became a massive hit. It was made for a small budget but earned over $100 million. They quickly became one of the most profitable comedy acts in Hollywood. During the early years, they were almost inseparable. They worked closely on ideas, constantly joked around, and inspired each other creatively. People who worked with them said they were always laughing together. But as their fame grew, things slowly began to change. Success brought pressure, money, and ego into the picture. Over time, cracks started to appear in their partnership. By the mid-1980s, the situation had become very different from their early days. They were no longer spending time together off camera. Crew members noticed that they rarely spoke unless they had to film a scene. They would perform perfectly in front of the cameras, showing the same comic timing that made them famous. But once filming stopped, they went to separate trailers and avoided each other. Their friendship had turned into a professional arrangement. What once felt natural now felt forced. There were several reasons for this breakdown. Creative differences played a big role. Tommy Chong often took control behind the scenes. He directed and produced many of their films. Because of this, he believed he deserved more influence and possibly a bigger share of the profits. Cheech, on the other hand, felt that their fame was built equally on both of them. He believed the audience loved them as a team, not just because of Chong's behind-the-scenes work. Their lifestyles also started to differ. While both men built their careers around marijuana humor, Chong remained deeply connected to that lifestyle in his personal life. Cheech began to change. As he grew older and more successful, he became more business-minded and started thinking about his future beyond stoner comedy. This difference created distance between them. They were no longer living similar lives, and that made it harder to connect. Money made everything worse. In their early days, they made informal agreements about how to share profits. When they were struggling artists, those agreements seemed fair. But when millions of dollars started coming in, those simple arrangements became complicated. Questions about who deserved what share created tension. Chong believed he was doing extra work as a director and producer. Cheech believed their success depended on both of their performances equally. Arguments about money soon became arguments about respect and recognition. They started counting lines and scripts to make sure each one had equal dialogue. They paid attention to who appeared more prominently on posters and album covers. Small details turned into big fights. Instead of celebrating their success, they began keeping score against each other. As their popularity started to decline in the mid-1980s, the pressure increased. Their later projects did not perform as well as their earlier work. When the money slowed down, disagreements became even more serious. Success can hide problems, but failure exposes them. Every business decision became a battle. Their management teams struggled to get them into the same room to discuss future plans. At the same time, Cheech was feeling trapped by his famous character. He had become known as the stereotypical stoner with limited dialogue. While that character made him famous, he wanted to prove he could do more. He wanted to be respected as a serious actor and filmmaker. In 1987, he wrote and directed Born in East LA, a film that combined comedy with deeper social themes about immigration and identity. The movie showed that he had ambitions beyond marijuana jokes. Hollywood noticed his effort. Cheech began receiving opportunities in television and film that did not involve the Cheech and Chong partnership. He appeared in shows like Nash Bridges and even did voice work in The Lion King. His solo career showed that he could succeed without the duo. For Chong, this was painful. His own solo projects did not receive the same level of success or attention. Chong felt abandoned. In his view, they had built something special together, and Cheech was walking away from it. He believed their partnership still had value. But the entertainment industry is quick to move on. Once Cheech proved he could stand alone, studios were less interested in developing projects for the duo. Their style of comedy also began to feel outdated as the culture changed. The breakup left both men hurt and bitter. For years, they barely spoke to each other. What once looked like a joyful friendship had turned into silence and resentment. Interviews became uncomfortable. When asked about their friendship, they gave polite answers, but careful observers could see tension in their expressions. Just when things seemed difficult enough, another major crisis hit Tommy Chong. In 2003, the federal government launched a large operation targeting businesses that sold drug paraphernalia, including glass pipes and bongs. This operation, known as Operation Pipe Dreams, included Chong's company. Authorities accused him of selling products that could be used for marijuana consumption. Chong was arrested and charged. Many supporters believed he was being targeted because of his public image as a cannabis advocate. Out of several people investigated, he was the only one who received a prison sentence. He served 9 months in federal prison. The experience was shocking for someone who had spent decades making people laugh. His prison sentence added another painful chapter to his story. Some saw it as political persecution. Others believed it was a consequence of breaking federal laws at the time. Either way, it damaged his reputation and career. While Cheech had moved forward into mainstream success, Chong was facing legal trouble and personal struggle. In later years, the two eventually reunited for tours and appearances. Time softened some of their anger. They realized that their partnership, despite all the pain, had created something unforgettable. Fans still love them. The cultural impact they made could not be erased. However, the truth remains that their relationship was far more complicated than it appeared. Behind the smoke-filled jokes and relaxed smiles was a story of ambition, ego, money disputes, lifestyle differences, betrayal, and legal trouble. They were not simply two carefree friends having fun. They were two strong personalities trying to manage fame, fortune, and changing times. Their story mirrors the counterculture movement they represented. It began with freedom, creativity, and rebellion in the 1970s. It later struggled under the weight of money, business pressure, and shifting cultural values in the 1980s and beyond. What started as a genuine friendship slowly turned into a strained professional partnership. In the end, Cheech and Chong's legacy is both impressive and complicated. They changed comedy and influenced generations of performers. They built an empire from a simple idea and became icons of a movement. But their journey also shows how fame and money can damage even the strongest bonds. The laughter was real, but so was the pain behind it. In 2003, Tommy Chong was arrested during a Drug Enforcement Administration sting operation. The case was part of a federal investigation called Operation Pipe Dreams. This operation targeted businesses that were selling glass pipes and bongs, which are often used for smoking marijuana. Chong's company, known as Chong Glass, sold these products online through a business connected to his son. For many people, the situation felt deeply ironic. The man who had built his career playing a funny stoner on stage and in movies was now facing serious prison time for selling smoking accessories. What made the case more controversial was the way it was handled. Many businesses were raided during the operation, but Chong was the only defendant without previous criminal convictions who received a prison sentence. He was sentenced to 9 months in federal prison, ordered to forfeit $13,000, and placed on probation for 1 year after his release. Other companies that sold similar products received lighter punishments, such as fines or probation. This difference led many observers to question why Chong was treated more harshly than others. Some journalists and legal experts pointed out that the United States Attorney's Office appeared determined to make an example of him. At the time, the country was in the middle of a strong federal war on drugs under President George W. Bush's administration. Chong was not just a businessman selling pipes. He was a well-known public supporter of marijuana legalization. Because of his fame and outspoken views, many believe that the government targeted him to send a message to other cannabis advocates. There were also unusual details about how the case was built. Federal agents reportedly tried several times to persuade Chong's company to ship products to Pennsylvania, a state with especially strict laws against drug paraphernalia. At first, the company was hesitant. The repeated efforts by agents to create a sale in that state suggested that they were working hard to secure charges that would lead to stronger penalties. While it is difficult to prove that the prosecution was politically motivated, the aggressive approach raised serious questions. Civil liberties attorneys later commented that whether or not the case was directly political, the sentence clearly warned others in the cannabis community about the risks of being too visible or outspoken. For Chong personally, the experience changed his life. He served his sentence at Taft Correctional Institution in California. During his time there, he met many non-violent drug offenders. Hearing their stories strengthened his belief that federal drug laws were unfair and overly harsh. When Chong was released in July 2004, he did not step back from public life. Instead, he became even more vocal about cannabis legalization and criminal justice reform. The prosecution that may have been meant to silence him ended up giving him a stronger platform. He used his celebrity status to speak out about what he believed were injustices in the legal system. This legal battle created another major difference between Chong and Cheech Marin. While Chong became more deeply involved in activism, Cheech continued focusing on mainstream acting and entertainment. Their lives moved in very different directions. This difference added to the emotional distance that had already grown between them. The case also brought attention to something that had long been quietly discussed. Many fans had always wondered how much of their on-screen drug use reflected real-life habits. For Chong, the answer appeared to be complicated. While their comedy made marijuana seem harmless and funny, the reality behind the scenes was not always so simple. People who worked closely with the duo said that Chong's drug use was heavy and constant. It was not just occasional use for creativity or relaxation. According to those around him, it was all day, every day for long periods of time. In addition to marijuana, he experimented with psychedelics. This level of consumption sometimes made professional work difficult. In their early years, both men had been part of the 1960s counterculture. Experimenting with drugs was common in that movement. But as their careers grew, their personal habits changed in different ways. Cheech gradually reduced his drug use, especially as business responsibilities increased. Chong, however, continued at the same pace and sometimes even intensified his habits. There were moments when coworkers became concerned. Some people recalled times when Chong seemed mentally distant or unreachable. He would forget conversations or appear unprepared for scheduled work. Film shoots and recording sessions sometimes had to be arranged around periods when he was more focused and alert. What fans saw as funny stoner behavior could sometimes look worrying up close. This situation created a difficult problem. Their entire brand was built on drug humor. Marijuana jokes made them famous and wealthy. It was not easy for anyone to confront the possibility that the lifestyle behind the comedy might be harmful. The business model depended on their image as carefree smokers. Raising concerns risked damaging the brand that supported everyone involved. In later interviews, Chong himself admitted that he had been high almost constantly for decades. He once said that he had been high for about 30 years straight. This confirmed what many close to him had already known. While he often spoke about his drug use casually and without regret, others recognized that it sometimes created real challenges. Their story highlights a complex reality. On one hand, their comedy helped normalize marijuana for mainstream audiences. They made it seem less dangerous and less taboo. On the other hand, their personal experiences showed that heavy substance use can carry consequences. The truth is more complicated than the simple image of two happy stoners having harmless fun. After many years apart, the two men eventually decided to reunite. In September 2008, they appeared together on stage in San Francisco for the first time in more than 20 years. The Light Up America tour officially marked their comeback as a duo. Fans were excited and nostalgic. The audience cheered loudly as they performed updated versions of their classic routines. However, behind the scenes, the reunion was not as emotional as some might have imagined. People who worked on the tour said that their relationship remained distant. They had separate dressing rooms and separate transportation. They met briefly to discuss performances, then went their own ways. On stage, they appeared relaxed and synchronized, but off stage, the connection felt more professional than personal. Many observers believe that financial reasons played a major role in the reunion. Comedy was experiencing renewed popularity. Nostalgia acts were attracting large crowds. At the same time, cannabis culture was becoming more mainstream as several states began discussing legalization. The timing created a strong business opportunity. For both men, the reunion made sense financially. Working together again allowed them to benefit from their shared legacy. But this did not mean that all past wounds were healed. Some described their dynamic as polite but distant, similar to divorced parents cooperating for a public event. They were civil and professional, but not truly close. In interviews promoting their reunion, they avoided discussing their past conflicts in detail. When asked about their years apart, they often responded with humor or vague comments about creative differences. They did not openly revisit the deeper issues that had divided them. As they have grown older, there have been signs of softer feelings between them. Age and time can change perspective. In more recent appearances, there have been moments that seem warmer and more genuine. Still, there remains a sense of distance shaped by decades of complicated history. Their journey represents more than just the story of a comedy duo. It reflects the broader path of the counterculture movement they once symbolized. In the 1970s, they represented freedom, rebellion, and shared ideals. In the 1980s, their partnership struggled under the weight of money, ambition, and industry pressures. In the 21st century, they reached a practical understanding shaped by business opportunities and changing social attitudes about cannabis. For fans, they once represented the perfect image of friendship. Two men laughing together, rejecting authority, and enjoying life without worry. The reality was far more complex. Like many creative partnerships, theirs faced jealousy, pride, competition, and hurt feelings. Many famous entertainment duos have experienced similar conflicts. Creative partnerships often struggle when success, money, and personal ambition grow. What made their story especially surprising was how different their real relationship became from the relaxed image they projected. Despite everything, their cultural impact remains strong. They helped change how society viewed marijuana. Long before legalization became common in parts of the United States, they made cannabis seem normal and even humorous. At the same time, their real lives remind us that substance use is not always simple or consequence-free. Now in their later years, Cheech and Chong share a complicated but lasting bond. They may never return to the carefree friendship of their early days, but they recognize that together they created something important. Their work continues to make new generations laugh. Their movies and albums remain popular. The deeper meaning of their story may lie in its honesty about human relationships. Friendships can be powerful and creative, but they can also be fragile. Success can bring both joy and division. Time may not erase past pain, but it can offer understanding. In the end, Cheech and Chong's legacy is not only about comedy or cannabis culture. It is also about the realities behind fame, the challenges of partnership, and the truth that even the most joyful public image can hide private struggles.